Every year, thousands of people turn their hands to learn the age-old craft of jewellery making. But what is a jeweller? Who are the people who make the creative, sparkly things we have come to know and love? Where do they make it? How do they make it? What do their workshops look like? And what led them down that specific path? In this short series, come on a journey of discovery with me to meet the jewellers who are creating and selling their work, building their own small but wonderful businesses, and learning all different aspects of this incredible craft. Let's meet the Handmade Jewellers.
Welcome, I'm Jessica Rose, a jeweller, teacher and the founder of Jewellers Academy, where we teach people how to make jewellery and how to create thriving jewellery businesses. Today I'm going to be spending the day with jeweller Ian Sainsbury. Ian lives here in Cambridge in the UK with his family and 2 dogs. After a long, successful career in the pharmaceutical industries, Ian's life took a turn when he decided to leave his corporate job and pursue his passion for making things. Today, we'll get to hear about Ian's unique journey into jewellery making. Plus, we're going to be doing some making together, and we'll get to see inside his home jewellery workshop, complete with all the tools. I'm excited, so let's go and meet Ian. Hi Ian!
Hi Jess!
Lovely to see you.
Good to see you too. Would you like to come in?
Yes, please.
Come on in. Welcome to my space.
Wow, it's impressive. So this is a converted garage?
Yes.
Give us a little tour, show me around.
I will do. So this is my main workbench. It's the oldest part of my workshop. It's the one I started out with. It's got all the essentials. You've got your bench peg. The height is important, so it's higher than a normal sort of kitchen unit. So when you sit down, your head is close to the bench peg. It's got sort of all the tools arrayed round so that they're handy and they're useful.
Yeah, this looks cool. So these are all your stone
Yes.
setting.
So they're
I
actually,
recognise some of these
I know,
from the diplomas.
they're also arranged in the right order to use to do that. Because
Right.
that was the key thing
For
I found
pave,
is
yeah.
I just reset this to whatever order I'm actually doing at the time. And obviously then there's all the gravers. Because
Nice.
the last thing you want to do is put a graver down on the work surface and put your arm on it. So
Yeah.
they're all out of the way.
And show us what you're working on at the moment while we're
So
here.
this is just a simple copper ring with 7 CZs set into it, which they've all been levelled and they're all perfectly in line.
Wonderful.
And then we've got some of my favourite hammers, including my Fritz, always a good one. And obviously a good quality saw I think is essential.
Yeah.
One of the most useful pieces of equipment I think.
Brilliant.
And then what else have we got in here?
You've got your torch. Show us what it does.
To turn it on, it's magic because it all works from water.
Wow.
So the thing with this is it doesn't produce or hold any explosive gases, and it all just works. Produces a really hot flame, which is very clean. And in fact, you can get away without having to use any borax
Yeah.
because it's a clean flame.
Wow.
But it's one of those torches that you use predominantly for gold or for very small repairs, because you can put needle tips onto these. So you can work on tiny pieces and you make the flame very small. But for general work in silver, I always tend to use a butane torch anyway. It's slightly less aggressive. Over here we've got pickle pot with the tape around just to stop all the pickle escaping. An ultrasound machine. I bought that, and actually it's one of those things that I keep on looking at going, I should use it more. But as soon as I've set a stone, I'm like, is this safe in ultrasound? So I really should use it before I set stones. But it's still useful.
Yes, removing the grease.
And then the tool zone special of a bench grinder, which normally has 2 stones, and it's just basically got 2 mops, one for Tripoli and one for Rouge. But then it's over a draft box, which I used to use when I was doing a lot of sanding. So all the dust and rubbish is pulled downwards with a vacuum that attaches on here. What I've done is I've looked at lots of people's various setups and seen what I think would actually be quite good and what would work. And this is my interpretation. A tumbler, not an expensive one, but it works really well. and I'm not using it all the time, so it doesn't have to be the world's most expensive. But then we come to the most useful tool within the workshop, which is the
rolling mill.
Brilliant bit of kit. This is one of the newer ones from Durston, and it's got a gearing system, so it's not really hard to use. But it is the one thing that allows you to do those jobs where you need a piece of metal at the end of the day and you don't have any. What do you do? Well, if you've got a mill, at least you can cast an ingot and then roll it down. And once you've rolled it down, you can either then make it into wire or whatever else. But if you don't have one, you have to wait until someone can send you some wire.
Yeah, so this makes you less reliant.
This makes you a lot less reliant.
Yeah.
Also, in some respects, I actually prefer to create my own ingots and then hand forge them, then put them through the mill, because actually you get a slightly different finish than if you get them just produced somewhere else. Last piece over here, this is an inside engraver for engraving on the inside of rings. So rather than having to send them away, you can sort of engrave inside. It's rudimentary. It won't do anything flashy. It's not a laser.
But you can do some of your own engraving.
Do your own engraving, yes.
Yeah.
It's a simple diamond stylus on the end, and it just reflects whatever you draw down at the bottom. And that's the main bits, as far as I can think. I can't think of anything else.
Well, that's quite a lot.
There is quite a lot in here. I mean, it's one of those things that I've been building it up gradually as I've gone along.
Yeah.
And sometimes I'll look at something and think, do I need to buy the stock one, or can I adapt something?
Because with all these tools, or a lot of them, you don't need them
No.
to make jewellery, but they make life easier and more fun, and you can go further and explore more techniques.
Absolutely. I mean, most of my tools have had some form of adaptation in some way. And I think that's another important thing, is when you get something, when you buy it in, it may not be exactly what you want.
Not yet.
No.
So I would love next to have a little look at your jewellery.
Fantastic. Let's do that. There's a mix here. There's a real mix of things I do. There's stuff which is generally more like the work that I do myself, which is sandcasting, with the finer details involved. There's also pieces from the diplomas that we've done, and one or two other bits which come from the family where I've given them various bits of jewellery.
Oh,
and
of course.
they brought it back just to sort of show off a little bit here. So the ring, it's the circles within a circle, which is sort of inspired by sort of Anglo-Saxon design.
Thank you, Ian, for having us here in your home.
Oh, thank you for coming along.
Yes.
It's lovely to have you here.
Yes, I'm excited to learn more about you and about your jewellery making. So to get started, do you want to share just a little bit about what kind of things do you generally make?
Yeah, and that's a good question. I mean, I started off making very simple things, simple shapes, simple rings. But as I've developed over the last couple of years, what I find that I like taking organic structures or rough structures or rough shapes and fitting them in with fine jewellery, so that there's that sort of fine and a little bit of organic coming in, because I quite like that sort of juxtaposition between the two.
And you work quite a bit with gemstones as well, don't you?
I do. I love using gemstones of specific colours. I've used quite a lot of birthstones as well. I mean, my favourite's sapphire. I love sapphires. The challenge with those is obviously you have to then address the structure and the challenges of each stone when you're making the piece, because something like an opal is quite fragile, so you can't necessarily put it in the same kind of setting or the same kind of use as you'd say a sapphire or a ruby. I like it when there's some colour in a piece.
Yes, I'm a fan too. A fan of the colour and the gemstones. So could you tell us a bit about how you got involved in jewellery making? Have you always been a jeweller, or how did you come to learn about this craft?
It's a good question. No, I'm very late to coming to jewellery. In fact, I've only done it for a few years. I originally started out in the pharmaceutical industry for the last sort of 20, 25 years. When you're in the industry, it's very hard to sort of get out of it. It sort of absorbs you. So I did lots of different roles when I was there, but eventually I did come out, but it was a case of I found jewellery making accidentally. So I had an interest in restoring things, so I restored straight razors, mainly because I loved working on the wood within them. But also then I started bringing in copper and brass to sort of ornament them slightly. And in having the copper, I had to work with the copper. And so I thought, well, I'll make something for Lizzie, my wife. And it was our 22nd wedding anniversary, copper. So I made a little heart. And I got to a point when I was thinking, well, I could do something with this. And I started looking around at courses, and that's where I came across the academy. So it was one of those it was a gradual progression in, albeit rather accelerated, because whenever I talk to people, they're like, how long have you been doing this for? 2-3 years? Like, oh. So, but it is one of those things that I've because I have been just focusing on this for 2-ish years, it's probably a lot more than people who do it part-time.
Yeah, you've gone all in.
Oh yeah, totally.
Yeah.
I love it.
And how has it changed your lifestyle? Because, to go from a corporate job, which is obviously quite demanding, and, all the things that come with that, I'm sure a lot of people can relate. How is it to transition to becoming a maker and being at home and having your own home studio?
I ended up as I said, spent a long time in the pharmaceutical industry. I did a lot of different roles, and the roles I was doing in the last sort of 10 years were all international. So I spent my life travelling around the world. It sounds very glamorous, and it is for about the first month, and then you just always see these hotels, and you never see your family, and it's always very busy. And eventually it just catches up with you, and as it did with me in late 2018, and I got to a point where I just was totally burnt out. For me, it was a single point in time, and I knew at that point that it had to change. And I essentially just walked away at that point from my career. But the reason I got into the sort of the jewellery side was because whilst I was here, I had to do something. Because one of the issues that I had with burnout was memory loss and lack of attention. So I had to focus on something. And so finding something to do gave me that focus, which wasn't necessarily the same focus I'd had before, where it'd all be very much on data and details and meetings and interactions. So I sort of went into the area of looking at things that I could make in more detail. And as a result, it sort of helped me a lot down the path to recovery. And one of the main things around is it just gives me so much pleasure to make things that they'll outlast me. I mean, that's the interesting thing about jewellery, is that you're making something that could go on for generations. The other huge benefit is the fact that I'm here. I have a home studio, and I'm here with my kids, and it just allows me to spend time with them. So it's one of those things. It's hard to say exactly how does it change, because it changed everything.
That's amazing, and I think you're so brave to have gone through that transition. I know it wasn't all optional, but just to have turned it into such a positive in your life. And I guess, how long did it take you from that point? Because it probably wasn't an immediate overnight.
No.
Now I've got a home studio. What was that journey like once you were sort of like, okay, I'm not going to do that anymore?
It's not one of those decisions you make overnight.
Yeah.
And I think the challenge is always, at what point do you say, I'd like to do something different? The important thing is to and from my perspective, and what I tell my children, is do what makes you happy. Do what you want to do that makes you happy. Do the thing you find enjoyable. All the way through their sort of their A-levels or GCSEs, we've always said to them, do the things that you enjoy doing, because ultimately that's what you'll do in life. And if you find that work is fun or play, it's not work. It's something you enjoy doing that you happen to get paid for.
Yeah, that's such a lovely message. And I think, you know, so many people don't grow up with that. And what a gift it is to have parents who are like, do what you love.
It was funny because, I mean, I went down a traditional path for me. I mean, when I was at school, you set a career out and that's what you were going to do. These days it's different. And I think it's important that people realise, I mean, certainly for our children, they realise early on that it's not about money. It's more about what you do with your life, how you enjoy and work with others, and it really is more about just having a better quality of life. But I think it's one of those things that you know when you know.
Yeah.
And I think that's a critical point, because when you know you want to do that rather than something else, then you spend your time trying to work out how you can do it, rather than this is a side gig that I'm doing at the moment.
Yes.
And it's that actually this is what I prefer to do. How do I get to do that?
Yeah.
And I think that's the thing that people should take away.
Yes. And having the courage to go for it. Yeah.
Yeah, that's the scary bit.
Yeah. So then you talked about, obviously you came across Jewellers Academy and the diplomas. How has that shaped your journey?
A lot. If I want to make this a go, I need to actually more like sort of CPD, gradually improve upon what I've already learned. So I went for the fine diploma. I haven't looked back. It's been brilliant. The videos surpass anything I've seen online that you can go to. They are brilliant, mainly in the fact that they're very close. And one of the challenges you've got, even in a one-to-one workshop, is it's very hard sometimes to see exactly what somebody's doing. And the close-up work is exceptional in that. I think on top of that, it's then the support you get and the feedback you get through really helps. Looking at the final pieces we all put together, all the various different people doing it, I think all of us would agree that the stuff we produced at the end, if you'd said that's what you're going to make at the beginning, you'd have thought, no, that's not going to happen. And looking at what I produced then, and looking back a year previously, I thought, wow, that's a big jump. And I think one of the key things there is it just opens up the potential. It's so far beyond what I was doing. And yeah, I mean, it's been fabulous all the way through.
Wonderful.
So glad I did it.
Oh, well, that makes me very happy to hear. And you've been an incredible student. It's been lovely seeing your journey. And I was going to ask a bit more about your business, because obviously you've mentioned you've not been making jewellery for that long, but you have really dedicated yourself to it in that time. So we do find some people's journeys are gradual and they just dip in and out for, you know, a decade, whereas I was similar to you. I was like, this is what I'm doing, let's go all in. So tell us about your business, what it's called, and what your hopes are for the future, what it's like at the moment.
Absolutely. So it started off as wooden parts, pun on words. And then I realised that was mildly limiting, because it meant that wood had to be in everything, and that's never going to be a future. So I looked at a lot of different businesses, and the thing that struck me is that simplicity is important in everything. So I thought, well, there isn't another Ian Sainsbury doing jewellery, so I just called it Ian Sainsbury Designs. The thing underneath it is, I brought in the sort of gems, metals, woods, because I love working with gemstones. I love working with metals, both some cast as well as just forged. And then you've got the wood part, and I find wood an amazing material to work with. So it's, as I said, it's a fledgling business in the fact that it's only been up and running for a while. But it's something that I built a website behind it, and it's great to have something tangible there that people could. So if somebody says, well, that's lovely, what have you made, and where can I see it, you can go and look at it. It's very much in that development stage as a business. I know it's going to be at least a couple of years before it gets any real traction, because that's just the way business is, and at the moment it's quite a challenging time business-wise. But it's something that I've accepted in the fact that it is partly word of mouth, it's partly people seeing things you made, but also a bit of belief in myself, but trust in what I think is good, that people will want to buy it, will want to look at it, wear it. And hopefully people will actually sort of say, look, I'd like you to make this. And that's the thing that I think is about really the sort of pinnacle of making jewellery. If somebody comes to you and says, I'd love to make a present for somebody, what can you make? And it's that pulling together people's ideas, working with them, that I think is just the best thing, because at the end of it, you give them something that they look at and they go, That's exactly what I was after. And you know that it's something that we've valued and treasured. And yes, it may have a flaw here or there, but it's been made by somebody who's actually cared about what's in it and how it's put together and what it means to the person who's receiving it.
Love that. Love that, Ian. Thank you. Well, I think that brings us on really nicely to go and do some making ourselves. So Ian, sandcasting.
Yep.
I have never done any casting before, so I'm very excited to learn a bit about it. So what do we have here in front of us?
This is pretty much everything you need for doing a whole range of different casting. Simply put, what you need is you need something to cast into, you need something to cast, and you need something within which to heat up what you're going to cast. They're the main things, along with a bit of Delft clay, which I'll come on to in a minute. Because I cast inside soldering boards, there's a box created, and then within the box I've then got ceramic heat shields, so that the heat doesn't go down and it doesn't come out. The heat all remains within the box. What you use mainly for casting is you either use a small crucible like this one, which is my old one that I use for silver, or you use a slightly bigger one. And the main reason that you use two different types, or this is for more silver, this is obviously for less. The downside of this is it takes slightly longer to heat up, but this one has less capacity. But they do exactly the same job. With this one, if you look at it, it's a bit shiny on the inside, and that's because I've already pre-treated it with borax. So you glaze the inside with borax, which means the silver doesn't stick to the inside, which is critical.
It sounds important.
It is rather important. So when you're making something, you could got two options when it comes to the what you cast. This is brand new casting grain. Comes in a variety of rods and little balls, and this is treated so it's pure casting grain. It's the best stuff to cast with. But you don't always have to use that. You can use the scraps that you get. But when you choose scraps, you make sure that they don't have large amounts of solder on them, because the solder will then affect A, how it casts, and B, how it assays at the other end. So you can put that in, but then you need to make sure that you use a suitable amount of casting grain as well. I'm putting quite a lot in, mainly because we'll make a ring, and it's just nice to have a bit of excess. It doesn't matter if you pour too much, because it'll always just run around the edges, and you can always just take it off and use it again.
Yeah. Better to have too much than too little.
Exactly. So if we put those to one side, I've got two different casting rings here. A big one, obviously, and a small one. They do exactly the same thing, and they look pretty similar. The large one is obviously much larger, much thicker. You can use it for bangles or for other big pieces that you need to do multiple sprues on. But what we're going to use is the smaller one. Now, when you buy these, they look like that. They're flat, and you can only put sand in. Nearly everybody who casts drills a hole in the side. and the reason you do this is it's a lot easier.
Yeah.
Because if you're trying to pour onto something that way, the metal has to go down and has to run sideways. Whereas if you pour into something that way, it just pours straight down into the mould.
Right.
And that's the reason why everybody does this. It just makes life easier. There's little bits which I've drilled out around the sides. That's for air holes. But you'll see those when we come into it. So that's the casting rings. These are aluminium. You can get steel ones. You can get all sorts of different ones. Now, the next important thing is a cooking tin. And the reason for this is that Delft clay is not the easiest thing to use. It's quite messy, and it goes everywhere if you're not careful. So Delft clay is this rather lovely stuff. It's quite a fine, dusty clay, but it's then mixed with oil. And what you do is you take a good handful of it, because you want a lot of it. The next thing you do is you take a small ruler, or always useful rulers, and you just cut it up. And the reason you do this is you want the grain size inside your casting ring to be quite small.
Right, so you're kind of taking out any chunks.
So you take out the chunks.
Yeah.
Okay. So you want it so it looks a bit like this. Now there are two halves to a casting ring. There's a female half and a male half. Okay. So you want this to be your flat surface you work with first. So you put the casting ring down like that. So you've got nice soft granular clay underneath. Then put loads of clay in and you press it down. Now, once you've got to about that point, the variable force applicator, a hammer. And you just give it a tap. And the reason you do this is because you want all of the clay compacted through, so that when you press your object into it, it comes out nice and clean.
Oh, nice.
So what you've got then is a nice flat surface within which you're working. Okay, I'll take my bigger ruler because it's easier. Always a steel ruler because you get a nice edge. And you just clean off the bottom.
That is very satisfying as well.
It is.
I'm enjoying this so far.
It is very good. So you clear away all of this. Now, when you cast something, you don't want the two halves to join together. So use flour. And if you just tap a little bit of flour on, whoops, there we go, bit of flour on, then dust it round, that stops the two halves sticking together. Okay. We then take something which we want to make. Take a wax one, which is small. It's the turquoise wax. I turned it on the lathe and it's nice and smooth. So you find where your hole is, because what you want to do is you want to put that as close as you can without to the hole.
Right.
And the reason being is you want the silver to pour in as fast as it can. If you think about where your top of your piece is, you don't want it to go too far down, because if it does, the silver it'll slow down. It'll get cold.
Oh, I see.
It's all about getting heat into it as soon as you can.
Right.
So you've always got to try and remember where it is. So there it is, right. Then you take your ruler and just press down gently. And you want about half of it in there.
Okay.
Okay. Then you take the other side, okay, and you marry them up. And on most of them, they'll have a line. But it doesn't matter if they don't, because you've drilled a hole, which helps you. Okay. So when that's done, you can put that there, and you bring this back. And you just make it nice and granular again. So we can put that to one side, and then what we do is just put a little bit of this in. Make sure it's nice granular stuff over the top, and gently put it in, because you don't want to dislodge the thing you're trying to cast.
So you have to be a bit gentle at the beginning.
At the beginning, and then you start.
But then
firming
there'll be a
up.
hammer, I'm sure.
There is a hammer, yeah. once you get there. There we go. Right.
And a ring's what you normally cast, or can you cast pendants?
I've cast all sorts of things. In some of the jewellery I showed earlier, there was the big pendant, and there was a square piece in the middle with triangles.
Yeah.
So that was cast as a single piece, with sort of quite literally a wax cast cut out and then poured. The challenge with that is you were casting 4 different points separately at the same time. So basically, you did this, but you had to pour into 4 points at the same time, which made it kind of hard.
Yes.
But that's what makes it fun. A little bit of a tap. Bring back the ruler. Put that to one side. Get rid of the excess. Now we've got it made, it's nice and smooth both sides. Okay. Just open it very quickly. There we go. And what you'll see is you've got where you put your cast in and what you've got on the other side. And what you'll notice is it's nice and crisp and clear all the way around the edges. Now, the next fun bit is making sure that when you pour something, it actually goes in.
Yes, that sounds important.
So before you actually do anything else, let me move that there. The best thing to do is you take the centre point of your hole, where the silver's coming in, and take a nice
It's just the back of a paintbrush.
Brush, make a dimple, and then you pull away with your thumb. And the reason you do that is that you want it to be as smooth as possible. It's all about speed of the silver coming in and filling in the gaps where the mould was. So what you do is you look to make sure that you can see where the mould is, and you've got a nice entry point. You do that on both, and you hopefully manage to fit it so that it pairs up, if you're lucky. Sometimes it doesn't, but you're normally pretty lucky. You don't want it too big as well, because if you make it too big, the sprue ends up being huge.
Right.
And you've got a lot of cleanup to do.
Yes, yeah.
Okay. What I'm doing now, just take out the ring. Because it's a ring, it doesn't matter which side it is. If you're doing this with something with a shape, it's very important. Because if you get it wrong, you end up with the shape being mismatched.
Right,
And what I do is I just take a pinch of sand, One of the things I use a lot of, and I know other people do as well, is they use sand collected from different places. And I just place the sand just around the edges. I'm not going to do it all the way because just to show the difference.
Yeah, so you just can do half of the band.
Half of the band sand. And you can just make up the Delft clay with sand in it, but you waste a lot of sand doing that. If you do it this way,
it's just a sprinkle.
Just a sprinkle, it gives you texture. So what you do afterwards is you just take the former and you press it back in lightly. Don't have to press it too hard. And then pull it back out. And the same on the other side. There we go. Right. Now the last thing you have to do before you put everything together and start to heat up metal is you need air holes. So air holes are one of those things that if you don't put any in, nothing will happen because the metal flows in and the gas that's trapped in there doesn't go anywhere. Delft clay is slightly porous anyway, so it will go a little bit, but you'll end up with an incomplete cast. So with this, I've drilled holes, and what you do is basically just take a sharp stick, otherwise a dental pick, and just draw holes.
Nice.
To the edge.
The sunshine pattern.
Yes. And the reason I use this is when it comes to clean up afterwards, and it's all about clean up because you don't want to spend hours cleaning something up. If you use this, it's only a small little wafer of silver. If you use something big, so I used to use the tip of this, you end up with a lot of cleanup.
Yes.
So,
yeah.
right. So that's the mould. Let's hope it works.
Fingers crossed. We'll pray to the casting
the casting gods. So there you go. If you look in here, you can see the hole matches up.
Yeah.
So you can actually see through into the mould itself.
Yes.
Okay. So theoretically, that's good and it works. When you've got your mould, sometimes if it's a big piece, I'll use a clamp and hold it together. But normally it's rigid enough to stay together when you do this. Tend to put it so that the wide bit is on the far side, so when I'm pouring it's easier. Okay. Now, the first thing you don't want to just heat metal up. It's going to waste so much energy putting energy into the metal and the crucible at the same time. So take that out and we get the torch.
Oh, exciting.
Okay, so this is where the room gets rather warm. Okay, so and noisy. So what we do is we heat this up. And you'll see it sparkling a little bit of light. And we want to get it to a nice temperature. Now if you see the orange coming off, that's the borax that I coated it with. So the reason that you use borax is it creates a non-oxidising atmosphere. Because obviously you don't want all your silver to oxidise, it looks like rubbish after that. So you want to get it nice and warm. You always feel the heat coming from it. Okay, now that's a bit warmer. It takes the initial heat off. We put this back in, okay? So we've now got our silver sitting in there. You might hear it pinging. That's the borax cooling down. Now we start heating properly. So what we do first is we'll heat it up a bit. We'll then take some borax powder and sprinkle it over. And that's so that you heat it in a non-oxidising atmosphere. And it heats more effectively and it doesn't melt, it doesn't damage the silver. You can immediately see the silver changing colour very slightly. You see it? Yeah?
Yeah.
So lift that off, sprinkle a little bit of borax. And what you see now is that apart from a little bit picks up, it goes orange, the flame. Now what we have to do now is just heat it up until everything melts. So you can see the sheet metal melts really quickly. This big lump here is going to take a while. But what you're aiming for is what's called a rolling melt. So it goes through stages. So what you'll see that it starts to run a little bit on the surface.
Yeah.
And then suddenly it'll all go at once. And once it's done that, when it's all melted and moving around, that's when you start to count.
Count?
You count, yeah.
What number are we counting to?
30.
30?
Yeah.
What happens at liftoff?
Well, at 30, it's hot enough to pour.
Right, I see.
So you can see that some bits have melted already.
Yeah.
And some of the granules down here on this side are only just starting to go. But you can see them melting.
Gorgeous.
Oh yeah, it's very satisfying this.
Oh, amazing.
And what you'll notice is that the closer in you get, the more flame kicks out, but actually the hotter it is in the crucible. So the reason you want to do this fast is because you do not want to have the metal hotter than it needs to be for any length of time. Because if you do, then most silver has got zinc in it, and the zinc starts to evaporate at higher temperatures.
Right.
Then you start losing the silver, which isn't good.
No. Oh wow, it's coming together.
Yeah, it doesn't take long. Change hands. Okay. A little bit there.
We start counting yet?
Nah. There we go. You got to wait. So if you look at it, if you look on the surface, there's still some which is still solid.
Yeah.
You want to wait till that's complete. This is why you get a circular crucible as well. Because what you want, if you can see, is you want it like water. You see it's rolling?
Yeah.
That's a rolling melt.
Wow.
So now you count to 30
Okay.
in your head. You don't have to get out loud.
Mesmerizing.
You need to heat up the spout to make sure it doesn't cool down there whilst keeping it hot. Heat up the mould a little bit. You ready?
Yes, I'm ready. Woo!
There you go.
That was special.
Now what
A
you
little
see,
bit escaped.
Oh, it always does.
Ah.
But it's better to have some escaping than not all of it going in. So what you'll have seen is you saw the smoke coming out around the sides. That was basically the silver dumping into the mould and then just pushing all the gas out. Now,
Right.
it's pretty cold already. Yeah. Ooh. So with this is red hot inside. You don't touch that. But you're okay as long as you haven't spilled too much on the outside. If you spill a lot on the outside, this is hot. And I'd use some gloves. I've got some over there. You hold it to one side. Let's see if it worked.
And the moment of truth.
There you go.
Oh wow.
So here you go. One cast.
Wow. So that's the sprue, the big bit at the end, and then we have.
So what you'll see is you got the ring here. As you can see, the shiny bit. That's just the bit which hasn't had any sand in it.
Yeah.
You've then got the rough bit here, which is sandy. You see this little line here? That's the air vent.
Right.
So you can see why you don't want a big one, because then you have to clean this up, and then you have to make it look like the metal beside it.
Yes.
And then you've got the sprue, which is this bit. And you've got the vent hole. And if it's a good pour, you won't see any variance in width all the way around.
It looks pretty good, yeah.
It's not bad. I'll be happy with that one.
Yeah. Awesome work.
So there you go.
That's how we sandcast.
That's sandcasting.
Thank you, Ian, for that lovely demonstration. So now I'm going to have a go.
Yep.
First time ever. So I'm going to start with some of this gorgeous clay. Right.
So you just push it down. That's it.
Line it up.
Yeah, that's it. With it as you learn how it all should look.
Absolutely. There we go. Just push.
Yep, and then push down the. That's it. And pointed at the crucible. That's it. Okay, there's probably about there. So if you turn the torch off, just click the button. That's it. There you go. It goes in. There you go. So as I said, you start off to get it a little bit warm.
Okay, one smooth movement.
When you start pouring, don't stop.
Okay.
Which is what most people do when they haven't done it before.
Right.
And you get a failed pour.
Got to commit.
Yeah. So what you want to do is lift it up, move it over towards this way, and heat that spout at the same time as heating the silver. That's it. bit more on the spout. That's it. Okay, now hold the crucible steady, and you see where the hole is in the melt in the crucible. Sorry, in the mould.
Yeah.
Right, aim for that and just do it in one nice smooth pour.
Okay, 3, 2, 1. Woo!
Okay, turn off. There you go.
That was dramatic.
That must have been loosened when we did the last one.
Oh, so it came out, didn't
came
it?
out, yeah.
Oh.
There we go.
Oh.
That's why you have something else underneath, you see.
Yes. Safety first.
These things happen.
Do you think it possibly worked?
Yeah, I did. Yeah. Hopefully you got enough in there. There was enough in the crucible for you to do.
Yeah. I went all in.
Yeah.
I committed.
I know. I hope you did. Right, so if you want to find out, what you want to do now is take the edge of that ruler and just twist it and lever it open.
Okay, and I can touch this.
You touch the sand. Hold the other side. Yeah, that's warm, it's not hot.
Yeah?
Yeah. Just don't touch what's inside it.
Oh, it's kind of coming apart anyway.
Yeah, just lever it and see if it works. Just push.
Oh. Here we go.
Oh, almost.
Oh, so close. Oh. So I have like a snake ring.
You do?
Half-done ring.
You do. There just wasn't enough there. There we
Ah.
go. But
well, I'm very excited to have had a go to learn a bit more about casting. So thank you.
That's quite okay. I'm sure we can do some more in the future.
Yeah, absolutely.
You see, it's one of those things. It's kind of fun. But I think if that hadn't slipped out, you would have definitely cast that all the way around.
Brilliant.
I
love it.
The first go.
We've done a lot of stuff, haven't we? So I reckon we deserve a nice walk with the dogs.
Indeed.
To relax.
Fantastic.
So Ian, tell us a bit about where you get your inspiration from for your jewellery.
Inspiration for me is a hard thing because it's hard to put your finger exactly on what that one thing is. But to me, walking the dogs, coming outside, looking at other jewellers on things like Instagram, it's a mix of things. I didn't grow up here. I grew up, as I've said before, in Cornwall. And one of the things in Cornwall is you've got the coastline. And the coastline's a great inspiration because it's the way that the sea moves, the sand, the cliffs. I love all of that. And it's just the colours you get. In some of my pieces, I use a lot of London blue topaz because the colour of the stone reflects very much the colour of the water. It's great to get an idea, and sometimes that would just take me in a totally different direction. And I think that's the thing that I've discovered more in the last year or two, is that not forcing it is probably the best way to go about it. Look around, see what there is, and take pieces from it.
Wonderful. What's your most proud piece that you've ever made? What's the piece you're the most proud of?
I'm going to cheat and say there's a couple of pieces.
Go for it.
One of them is the ring I made for my wife to celebrate 30 years together. And that was something that, a technique I'd learnt that week. I thought, I'll make something. And I think one of the other pieces I was very proud of as well was something I did for my daughter's 18th, my oldest, because it was the first time I played with gold.
Played?
Yeah, it was very much a risk. It was a bit of a gamble.
Yeah.
It was the most expensive stone I'd ever bought at that point. It was like a 5-carat sapphire, and it was set in a runner pendant with 2 blue diamonds either side, all
Gorgeous.
in 18-carat white. And it was a massive learning curve for me because everything was new. So it's either something brand new to play with as an idea or something brand new as a technique that I love doing. And both those pieces have so much sort of sentimental elements attached to them as well.
Yeah. Did she love it?
Oh yeah.
That's a great 18th birthday present. Handmade by your dad. Very cool.
I try and mark. So now I'm trying to mark the big one. So 18th, I gave her that to my other child Jay. She got an opal pendant for her 16th.
Oh, lovely.
For their 16th. So it's trying to mark important pieces with important pieces,
Yeah.
but important periods in time.
Yeah, absolutely. What advice would you give to someone starting out in their jewellery making journey, or perhaps running a jewellery business? Is there anything that you have learnt so far that you feel like you wish you'd known when you first started, or any pearls of wisdom?
I think one of the key things is take risks. Accept that things will go wrong. They will. You'll never get things right the first time, but take a gamble. If you think, oh, I'd like to do that in gold, or I'd like to do that in silver, do it. Try it. The worst you can do is have to melt it down and start again. And don't be afraid of being sort of overstretching yourself sometimes. But also listen to what other people say, listen and learn. I mean, going to fairs, talking to people about their jewellery, it's a great way of getting more inspiration, getting new ideas, or learning how to do a different technique just by talking to people.
Yeah, absolutely. Wonderful. Well, thank you, Ian.
No worries. Thank you very much.